Why does a business exist, right? Some will say to make money. I believe to solve problems. And if everybody in the organization isn't looking at it through the lens of what is one problem that I've solved this week, then what is the true value that's being added? I'm Michael Mogill, founder and CEO of Crisp, the nation's #1 law firm growth company. I've built my business through practice, not theory. Crisp started with just $500 to my name and has grown to over 8 figures in revenue over the last few years, earning a spot on the Inc. 500 list of the fastest growing private companies in America. Our approach has been to take everything we've learned about generating massive growth within our own organization and help the country's most ambitious and committed law firm owners do the same for theirs. In each episode of this podcast, I sit down with innovative market leaders from the legal industry and beyond to learn from those who thrive in the face of adversity, challenge the status quo, and define what it means to be a true game changer.
This is Jessica, Head of Coaching Strategy at Crisp, and today we're flipping the script for another special edition episode to get Michael's take on why so many firm owners keep making the same hiring mistakes and how to stop getting it wrong, how to attract and compete for top talent even if you don't have the biggest budget, and why paying more for top talent doesn't guarantee better results and what to do about it.
I'm not a fan of the strategists at all, just because maybe they come from a much larger organization where they had a ton of layers below them and a lot of middle management and a lot of subject matter experts, and everything was an idea, and perhaps they blended into the furniture for long enough that they got the sense that they were actually making contributions to the organization.
That's coming up on the Game Changing Attorney podcast. Hello, welcome to another AMMA.
Welcome.
We have an exciting day ahead today, Michael. Do you know what we're talking about?
I do not.
We're going to talk about flashcards.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. You have no idea where we're going to go with that, but we're going to talk about flashcards.
Okay. Well, we did have some flashcards last night. So our daughters just got these addition and subtraction flashcards, and we were going through them. I mean, one's 6 years old, one's 3 years old, but with the oldest, I was kind of going through them, and I was like, all right, what's 3 plus 0? And, she's counting on her fingers, right? Or it would be something like, well, what's 8 plus 2? And it's taken her a while to go through these, but she's getting them right. As she's doing these, I felt like it would be important to show her what's possible.
Yes.
So I turned to you. All right, girl, let me show you what's possible. And then I start showing you the flashcards, and you're just banging these things out. 8 plus 7, 15. 9 plus 2, 10.
9 plus 2 is 10?
9 plus 2, 11. There you go. We got to keep that one in. I was thinking 8 plus 2 in my mind. Okay, 9 plus 2 is 11. 7 plus 3 is 10.
Yeah, and she's just looking at me in awe.
Boop, boop. You're just seeing the speed, the processing speed.
Yeah.
Go through, it was amazing. And now she's inspired.
Yeah.
And motivated just to get there. She's like, wow, she's so good. And I'm like, you can get there too. You're just going to have to practice these things.
Showing the world what's possible.
All right, 8 plus 7.
15.
There you go. 3 plus 0.
3.
There you go. I used to love flashcards. And it's so interesting to see how we start, because she's like, she's counting on her fingers, right? That's the way that she does it. But then soon, it almost becomes just automatic.
Compute. Yeah.
And then, once we get past the addition and subtraction, then we get to the multiplication, then division, then we get into percentages. It's good to be able to process quickly.
Yes. 100%. That's why we test for that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because when she's an adult, everyone said, oh, well, you're not going to have a calculator on you. And technically you do on your phone.
Yeah.
But if anyone's got to bust out a calculator when I'm in a meeting to do 8 plus 2.
See you later.
Oh, yeah. You're going to slap the hell out of them. Sometimes even just get 10% of something's easy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What's 20%? Well, it's 2 times 10%. We could go on and on about math and brain games.
But today, we're here for an AMA.
We are. So if you're just tuning into the podcast, do a couple different types of episodes. We got the interview style episodes. We bring on a guest from the legal industry or beyond, ask them questions, dissect their brain, their mentals, and figure out what insights they've gained across their life, and then share that on the podcast. Then we got the encore editions. We bring back some of our most popular episodes of the show. So we've done hundreds of episodes now. And then we got the AMMAs, where you guys submit the questions. You text us at 404-531-7691, and we might answer your question here on the show. And I love getting these texts because I never know what they're going to be. The questions are actually amazing. I know you compile a lot of these things. Sometimes someone is sending me some pictures or some memes. Memes.
Let's clarify that.
Memes. It's like something funny.
Yeah.
Right? And sometimes something political, and I'm not sure whether I should laugh or whether I should say, hey, don't send me that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we don't engage in that.
I engage with it. You know what I mean? I don't know. People can have a point of view.
This is true.
Right?
This is true.
But like I said, we take the best questions, we put them together, and we answer them here on this show. Another thing people might notice if they listen often enough is that we don't run any ads on this podcast. As you may listen to a lot of other podcasts, they do have sponsors and advertisements that can filter and dilute their message. We do not interrupt this podcast to run any ads. We don't sell any product or anything like that on the podcast. We want to just provide value to people. If people find it helpful and they continue to find it helpful, we continue to do the podcast. So what we do ask, because the show is not free, I mean, it's free, like you're listening to it right now, whether you're watching it, maybe you're watching it on YouTube. But if you get any sort of value from the show, meaning that we made you laugh, made you cry, we gave you some sort of insight to grow your law firm, go and share the show with a friend, another colleague, or go on, Spotify or Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review. This helps us reach more people and it helps the podcast grow. And if the podcast continues to reach more people and grow, we will keep it free 99. All right, Jessica, what questions do we have this week?
All right. Well, let's dive right in. So, Michael, question number 1. I feel like I'm doing everything right when it comes to our hiring. I ask lots of questions, check references, and they seem like rock stars in the interview. But then 6 months in, when they're not delivering results and just causing me headaches, I realize I've made a huge mistake. Why do I keep getting it wrong?
I mean, it could be a number of reasons. If you're doing everything right and you're not happy with the results of somebody new that you hired 6 months from the time at which you hired them, then maybe you're not doing everything right.
Correct.
I've been here. We've been here.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you can get so excited in an interview because you're looking for the person that's going to be the solution to all of your problems. And you're just hoping that they don't say something stupid that it essentially takes them out of the running. Like, I wish more people understood that in interviews, like the goal of many people that are hiring, right? Let's say you're a business owner or hiring manager or something like that. You want to fill the position. You need the help. So you want it to be the person in front of you. And as long as they don't say something stupid that essentially invalidates them from the role itself, it's like you want to fill it. So a lot of times, I mean, especially in the early days, I would get sold on a lot of just hardworking people. They came from a background of like they had adversity, right? And I would empathize with this because I also kind of grew up humble beginnings. I'd want to I almost treat them like rescue dogs. I wanted to bring them all into the business, and that did not have great results consistently over time. So if someone is saying everything right, that's fine. I think that's one part of an interview process, but there's also other criteria that you can use to vet them as well, because there's like what people say. I've never had anybody that we've ever interviewed that say they weren't going to work hard.
Correct.
Right? Or that they didn't care deeply or they didn't want the job.
Yeah.
Right?
I would also say if they're saying everything right, then look and say, are you actually asking the right questions?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, one of the questions we ask now is, what would make this a bad idea?
Yeah.
And they're like, what do you mean? What would make you working here a bad idea? Right? And then sometimes if they don't have questions, that's not a great thing either, because you can really learn about somebody based on the quality of their questions, whether they've done their homework or whether it's something that's like truly interesting or insightful. But the other things is that you have to have more vetting criteria on the front end. So what somebody says, by the time they got into a final interview, we've already vetted a lot of things like their skills.
Can they do the job?
Can they do the job? And that come in the form of like a test assignment or some sort of assessment that's relevant to the role. We were also, testing for, do they align on, certain values in terms of like their responsiveness, their attention to detail? Like they wouldn't have gotten to that stage in the process if they'd missed deadlines, for example. If they didn't turn in certain assignments, they didn't take certain assessments. Even if they just said, look, I don't, want to do these next steps, for example, and we take them out of the running. We really want to basically determine, does somebody have the skills first and foremost, right? And do they have like the mental capability to perform in the role? And then we're later vetting for all the cultural aspects of it from the standpoint of, do we align on values? And that's really what's discussed in an interview. But by the time we're meeting with them, it's not really so much of a question of can they perform in the role. If you're hiring people and 6 months in, you're finding that they're, let's just say, not performing to your expectations and you're disappointed. I mean, it could be that. It could be just a function of hiring process. It could also just be, one of the lessons we learned is that early on when you're hiring and when you're interviewing people, especially at early stages of the business, you need a lot of great execution people.
Yeah. And
you want to make sure that the people that you're hiring aren't these like high up in the clouds, like strategists that are going to come in and have a bunch of ideas, because, ideas are great, but you need more people to get things done, right? So you're hiring more on execution. Then as the firm starts to grow, then you start thinking, you know what, like we're getting a lot of things done, but what's going to, kind of take us into the future? And you want to hire people who've done or been where you want to take the firm. Like they've already kind of grown to that level of revenue, or they've grown to that level of complexity. They know what to do. So then you again say, okay, well, maybe I need the strategist. What I would recommend, and this is where we've made a lot of mistakes, I'm not a fan of the strategist at all. Like I'm not a fan just because maybe they come from a much larger organization where they had a ton of layers below them and a lot of middle management and a lot of like subject matter experts, and
everything was an idea.
Everything was an idea, and perhaps they blended into the furniture for long enough that they got the sense that they were actually making contributions to the organization, right? And you see a lot of these like consultants bounce around from organization to organization because that's exactly what they do. In many cases, offer no discernible value whatsoever, but the fact that they were there when something happened, I think gives them some sort of like street cred, right? But they were not necessarily the driver of that change or that impact. They just happened to be in the right place at the right time, and great, you did it, right? So I actually look at it and say like the perfect person generally, and again, this is not like to a specific person, this is just like traits, is the blend between strategy and execution. You want someone to have that high level strategy where they can think first principles and they can think a few steps ahead, and they have, you know, a lot of like just great critical thinking skills, but they also can roll up their sleeves and execute and get things done. I think that's kind of the perfect blend, especially as a firm grows early on. I mean, again, you may not be able to afford that type of person, so you're going to go in and say, okay, straight execution, but watch out for the strategist, because then you're just paying for their ideas. And ideas are nice, but if you don't have anyone to execute them, I mean, it
calls back on you. A few things, I mean, I could add to so many aspects of this, but also like no one's coming to save you. So it doesn't matter what role you scope out in this like ideal, perfect person, no one's coming to save you.
Yeah. So what does somebody do then? It is this realization that there are amazing people out there that have incredible capabilities, but it's also on you to ensure that, I mean, there could also be other factors. It's like, are you going to set them up for success? What did the onboarding look like? Do they have clarity over the role itself? Do they know how they're measured? Do they know what success looks like? Things that we talked about even in previous podcasts in terms of if you're not satisfied with their performance after 6 months, do they know that they're not performing?
Right.
And then why'd you have to wait 6 months, right? Why couldn't you figure this out in 3 months, right? In the first 90 days or even in the first 30 days, right? Because I'm a big advocate of like, let's see something in 30 days. I don't love the whole, well, we're going to spend 30 days learning, right? Because the problem is that gets used to a much slower pace than when you finally ask that person to do something. And let's say in the 60-day mark, you find out they can't do anything. You're like, what did I just wait 60 days to figure that out?
I used to put people on random projects week one. Had nothing to do with what their job was or what they were hired for. I just want to see how they would respond.
Correct. Now, it is important to hear some nuance here. Yes, you should absolutely have an onboarding process. There should absolutely be a learning period.
Yes.
But there's usually some quick wins you can get early on.
Correct.
Or some sort of critical result that you can get in the first 30 days. Doesn't have to be crazy, but let's just see something, some sort of execution, right? Some moving of the needle.
All right, let's move it on to question number 2. So I run a smaller firm and want top talent, but feel like I'm constantly losing out to bigger firms with bigger budgets and bigger brands. I've tried everything, but I feel like I just can't compete. What should I do?
Yeah, been there. I mean, this is like the story of early Crisp, you know, from basically 2012 to 2018, 2019 perhaps. So, you know, just bootstrapped the company, started the company with $500 to my name. You know, as we were growing in the 2012, 13, 14, 2015 time, there was companies all over Atlanta, these venture-funded companies, these SaaS, it's like software as a service companies that had all the funding, that they had all the resources, they were, you know, getting the awards, the accolades, and they were winning all the best places to work and the fastest growing companies and all that stuff. And here I am thinking, you know, just at the time, you know, Crisp was just a video company trying to get this thing off the ground and get it to grow. It's like, how can I possibly compete for talent with them, right? Like they were getting the best people. How can I grow? Because everybody wants to work there, right? Like they were posting things where, you know, on social media where it's like, you know, the employee's first day.
Oh, yeah.
And they got like a brand new MacBook and they're just like all these shirts and swag. And I was like, man, I can't do any of that stuff yet, right?
Yeah.
Like how do I get someone, enticed to come work with us? You got to be able to work with what you got, right? And there is going to be a draw. Now, you may not be able to get all of the best people, but there's going to be aspects of what you can offer that is going to be unique and valuable to, you know, to certain types of people. Let's say specifically even in marketing, for example. You know, if someone was going to go to a larger company, they may be confined to a very specific role doing that specific thing, like just email, for example. But at Crisp, right, they could do everything. They could learn about a lot of different fields in marketing. They could not just do email marketing. They could also learn about paid media. They can learn about social. They can learn about just marketing operations, life cycle marketing. They could just have their hands in a lot of different things and learn and just get those experiences, which is very unique. It's an opportunity they wouldn't get somewhere else, perhaps. The other thing is, again, we gave more autonomy, right? Just because, I mean, quite frankly, what was the other option, right? We were basically getting in at the ground floor. Like, we didn't have a huge team. There was no management hierarchy. I mean, this was kind of the fastest path to grow within the company because you were really coming in and being the one helping to build it.
And some of those core people, I mean, they're still here.
Oh, yeah.
That's the thing. I think at this stage, we've talked about on here before, but like building talent versus buying talent.
Yeah.
At that stage, you're building talent. So you're buying for the smart, hungry, humble. You're hiring them to say, hey, I can build out this person who has the grit. So if they're the cultural fit, you can pour into them and make it work.
Yeah. I mean, at a huge company, a lot of times, yes, you're going to get better benefits, but you're also going to be lost one amongst, 1,000 or 10,000 people. And at a much smaller organization, like, you have an opportunity to, be able to make a greater impact yourself and learn and grow, and really leaning into the impact, thing. It's not just a cute thing to say. If you can highlight how your firm makes an impact and what you do, whether it's things that you do in your community, whether it's things you do specifically with your clients, sometimes I would honestly recommend this, especially somebody new entering the workforce, or let's even say somebody younger. I think they would be better served joining a small organization that's growing quickly because of the rate at which their skills can develop, as opposed to going to a larger organization where things are going to move slow, and maybe it's all figured out and the processes are there, but there's limited mobility, there, and limited upside a lot of times. And then, quite frankly, I mean, if you're like 1 out of 500 account executives or your client or your customer success managers or something like that, it's like, great, man. It's like a very transactional place to be. But I will say that, the best thing that especially somebody new in their career, maybe even later in their career, can do is find a fast-growing company and strap yourself to that rocket ship.
Yes.
Because
you will learn so much.
What was it I saw? I forget which company this was recently. It wasn't NVIDIA, but although you could make this case for NVIDIA as well, where it was some company where even if you were like employee number like 80, at like their current valuation, you would have made like $200 million. If you have an opportunity to be a part of something like that, it's great. And with your firm, I mean, you look at it from the standpoint of like, what is unique to you? Maybe you give the people the opportunity to work cases, and be involved in many aspects of cases that they wouldn't be able to get at some other firm. Maybe there's an element of community service that you do. Maybe there's an element of just being able to learn from you and learn and just be able to just get that level of mentorship.
Yeah.
So there's ways to do it.
Yeah.
But early on, I mean, especially if you don't have the resources to compete, you're going to have to, build them up.
Absolutely. All right, to round us out today with question number 3. So, Michael, our firm has grown and my payroll is larger than it's ever been before. I'm paying more people, I'm paying top dollar, and yet I find myself still solving all the major problems in the firm myself. What's the point? Why does it feel like I'm running this firm alone, even though I have a large team? Sounds like some frustration here.
Yeah, well, it could be a couple things. And I've been here too. I would say that the first thing you have to consider is that even if you have a large team and you have a lot of leaders and you have a lot of people that are very high paid people, if you really look at it, and I think we've said this even on a past podcast, just to consider what your role is, think about all the problems in a business and in your law firm. And there's, let's say, levels to problems. There's just, small problems, medium-sized problems, large, and then, extra large, right? At the team member level, they're solving a lot of small, maybe medium-sized problems. And maybe at the middle manager leader level, it's medium and large and so on. But you think that the things that you are confronted with are all the problems that all the people in the company and all the leaders perhaps could not solve and figure out. So then it works its way up to you. So the way in which you're spending your time is solving the most difficult, complex problems that nobody else could solve before they got to you. Welcome to leadership, right? And welcome to running, a business. So it could be that. It could also just be the fact that, sometimes having a high head count doesn't mean you have a high talent count. And we've seen this in a lot of firms where they look massive, right? They've got over 100, team members. You look at the actual individual output of every single team member. There's not really metrics in place. There's not key performance indicators, not standards in terms of performance. You see so much variability. You could go and pull a Twitter here, cut 80% of them, and who knows if there would actually be a dip in output and productivity. A lot of it is just sometimes adding people and throwing people at problems doesn't necessarily solve those problems. And I would actually see that the larger an organization gets, the more difficult it is to have high output and productivity on a per person level, pound for pound.
Right.
Right. And it's just because it's, again, sometimes the accountability goes down, sometimes the standards are impacted and so on. So it's really looking at it from the standpoint of, yes, you may have hired more people, but the general reason that you would hire somebody is really to solve a capacity challenge. So meaning that to enable you or other people to do more, to serve more clients, for example, or a capability challenge where they come in and they add unique skills that the firm did not have previously. So whether it's relating to data or marketing or trial skills, whatever that capability that the need was, really looking at everybody through the lens of saying, okay, well, what is it that you do here? So we do a weekly internal report. Every single week. We've done this, like 10 years?
Yeah.
Longer. Every week. It goes out to the team, and every week it's, there's all sorts of questions there. You used to say like your wins, your stucks, your focus for the next week, like those sort of things just kind of helps us keep the pace in the company. And we recently switched out the wins question because I was like, okay, that's great. Like the wins is nice. We've done this for 10 years. I instead want to ask, what is the biggest problem you solved this week? The results or the responses are enlightening to say the least. And you start to look at it from the standpoint of like, why does a business exist, right? Some will say to make money. I believe to solve problems. And if everybody in the organization isn't looking at it through the lens of what is one problem that I've solved this week, then what is the true value that's being added, right? So if it's just transactional, like it's like I did my job, right? I answer the phones or whatever. Right. Okay, that's great. But if we have 5 other people doing those things or 10 other people doing those things and they have, variation in their output and so on, then what needs to happen to either match the output of the person who's at the top, or can we have, addition by subtraction here? And do we really truly need this many people? Sometimes you see like a team's performance increase when, the headcount goes down.
It's true.
Just because there's less complexity overall.
Yeah.
Again, I don't know if this answers the question. I mean, it could just be, like I said, it could be a multitude of different things here, but I would not equate necessarily like high headcount to high talent count. And it's very easy for an organization to get bloated unless you are also constantly trimming. And one way of doing that is asking yourself, you go through each person and say, would you enthusiastically rehire this person? Like if you were starting again. It's also looking at it from the standpoint of, sometimes organizations just, especially if there's a lot of like managers and leaders that are advocating for hiring additional roles and there's not, like clear criteria for when it is time to hire, it's very easy for that, that organization to get very bloated.
Right.
And the overall like revenue per employee starts to go down significantly. It's not exactly profitable. I mean, we know so many firm owners that you look like at their firm and you think, wow, this is a massive law firm and they're not profitable. They're losing money every single month. Mm-hmm. And that's a tough place to be. I mean, sometimes you got to sharpen the knife, and you got to trim to make the organization continuously efficient. Maybe it involves some top grading.
That's what I always say. I mean, there's always a bottom 10%. Like statistically, there's always a bottom 10%. And even when you get rid of that bottom 10%, someone else now falls to that bottom 10%. And so really understanding what is your standard and are you holding it?
Yeah. And then conversely, on the other side of this, it could also be like you have all these people and are you delegating to them, or are you delegating decision-making to them, or are you holding on to everything? Because something I've been guilty of even in past years is that, when you're making every single decision for everyone, they go to you with all their questions and all their problems and all their challenges.
You've enabled
it. Then you get to the point where it's like, instead of having 10 people dependent on your decision-making, you have 100, right? And they're not burning any calories mentally because they just delegate all of their decision-making to you. And they say, what should we do? And then they sit down with you and you give them the answer and they say, great, next time I have a problem, I'm going to come right back to you and I'm just going to, instead of me thinking about it, I'm just going to give it to you.
Yeah.
And you'll answer it for me and I'll go back to my desk.
Positive reinforcement when you keep doing it.
So a lot of times is you can figure out how good your team is by asking them, well, what do you think we should do? Mm-hmm. Right? Or sometimes you sit in a meeting and let's say you're doing like a leadership meeting and they ask you a question, all you got to do, just turn around in your chair, face the wall and say, nope.
Oh, I had a silence meeting this morning.
Send it right back to them and say, nope, not so fast, my friend. You are going to have to figure this one out. Then they'll start to develop that muscle, right? But if you're solving everybody's problems, it doesn't matter how many people you hire. You're just going to have more people dependent on you to solve their problems.
Exactly. All right, we'll round it out with that today.
All right, until next time.
You've been listening to the Game Changing Attorney podcast with Michael Mogill. If you found this episode valuable, here are 3 free ways that we can help you grow your law firm. Number 1, download the first chapter of Michael's book absolutely free at gamechangingattorney.com. Number 2, you can shoot Michael a text at 404-531-7691 and ask him any question you'd like. You might just hear the answer on the next episode. And finally, number 3, if you can leave this podcast a 5-star review, it will help us gain access to more influential thought leaders and bring their lessons learned here to you. For more information on this episode, see the show notes in your podcast app or visit legalpodcast.com.